Hi, I'm Asa Hale. When I was 16, my father said he was taking me on a trip. He smiled at the gate, then left me there, alone, with a one-way ticket to nowhere. That was the day he erased me from our family. He went home, took my name off every record, and stole the $99 million my grandfather left me. But what he didn't know was that Grandpa left one last secret. For me. And when my father opened the front door that night, I was already waiting. His face went white. Some families don't just betray you once, they build their whole legacy on it. When I was 16, my father abandoned me to steal my inheritance, but he forgot who taught me silence. When I was 16, my father told me we were taking a trip, just the two of us. For a kid who'd spent most of his life watching his dad walk past him like he was a shadow, that sounded like hope. He didn't smile much, didn't explain where we were going, but he said, "Pack light." And that was enough for me. I remember the ride to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport like it happened yesterday. He kept one hand on the wheel, the other tapping against the steering wheel in that impatient rhythm that always made me nervous. I tried to fill the silence with small talk, school, baseball, anything, but he gave me one-word answers. Still, I thought maybe he was just tired, maybe he was trying, in his own way. When we pulled up to the departure lane, he parked, grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and said, "Wait right here, I'll check us in." He walked toward the ticket counter without looking back. I stood there watching him disappear into the crowd. For the first 10 minutes, I was sure he'd be right back. After 20, I started checking the screens for our flight, though I didn't even know where we were going. After an hour, I knew something was wrong. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. Then it buzzed. One new message. My stomach dropped before I even pressed play. His voice came through, cold and sharp. "You're the shame of my life. Get lost, useless boy." That was it. No hesitation, no second sentence. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark glass of the terminal window. People rushed past me, families hugging, kids laughing, pilots checking their watches. And me, I was frozen in place, a kid without a father, without a ticket, without a clue what to do next. I sat down on a bench, still holding my grandfather's pocket watch, the only thing I had that ever felt like it belonged to me. It had stopped. The hands were locked at 12:01. I turned it over and whispered, "Guess time's done for me too." That watch had been a gift from Grandpa Silas a week before the so-called trip. I could still see his wrinkled hand placing it in mine, his voice gravelly but kind. "For your future," he'd said. "When the time is right, you'll know." He'd given me an envelope too, sealed, no note on it. I thought it was just another one of his old man wisdom letters about hard work and patience. I'd tossed it into my bag, figuring I'd read it later. I looked through my backpack now. The envelope was still there, edges crumpled. I almost opened it right then, but my hands were shaking too much. My brain was somewhere between denial and numbness. A boarding call echoed over the speakers, some flight to Atlanta. The noise made everything real. I looked around for my father, half hoping he'd jump out and say it was a joke, that this was some twisted lesson about independence. But the truth was right there in that voicemail. This wasn't a trip, it was an exile. Outside, the afternoon heat pressed against the airport windows. Planes roared overhead, one after another, lifting people to places they actually belonged. I sat there until the sun started to drop, watching the light change on the floor tiles, watching families reunite and strangers hurry off. I pulled out the envelope again. Maybe Grandpa had known. Maybe he'd seen this coming. But I couldn't open it. Not yet. I needed to breathe first. A cleaning cart rattled nearby. A man in his 50s pushed it slowly, humming something I couldn't place. When he noticed me sitting there, he paused. "You okay, kid?" he asked. I wanted to say yes, that I was fine, that my dad was just running late, but the words wouldn't come out. I just looked up at him, trying to read his face. There was no pity there, just concern. Real concern. He nodded toward my suitcase. "You look like you've been waiting on someone who ain't coming." I swallowed hard. "I think you're right." He leaned on his cart, studying me for a second, then said, "Airport's no place to stay the night. Come on, let's get you something to eat." For a moment, I hesitated. My father's voice still echoed in my head. Get lost, useless boy. But this stranger's voice felt different, steady, kind. I stood up slowly, gripping the pocket watch in my hand. Yeah, I said quietly. Maybe I could use something warm. As we walked toward the small diner near baggage claim, I looked back one last time at the spot where my father had left me, the place where my life had stopped. The watch in my palm stayed silent, frozen at 12:01. But for the first time, I wondered if maybe it hadn't stopped at all. Maybe it was waiting for me to start again. That man would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Arthur didn't speak much as we walked out of the airport. He kept a slow, even pace, like he didn't want to scare me off. The diner was only a few blocks away, tucked between an old pawn shop and a gas station with flickering lights. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease, but it was warm, and that was enough. We sat in a booth near the window. The vinyl seat squeaked under me, and I realized I hadn't eaten since the night before. My stomach made a noise loud enough that Arthur chuckled. Don't worry, kid, I'm not here to preach. Sometimes people don't need a sermon. They just need a meal. He flagged down the waitress, ordered 2 plates of eggs and toast, and poured us both coffee. I didn't ask why he was helping. Honestly, I was too tired to care. But there was something calm about him, like he'd seen worse and survived it. After the food came and I'd managed a few bites, he finally spoke again. Your name's Asa, right? I nodded slowly. My fork paused midair. Yeah. He looked at me for a long second, then said, I used to work for Silas Hale. My heart thudded. My grandpa? Your grandfather was a good man. Sharp. Tough as nails, but fair. He didn't throw money at problems. He listened. Helped people when no one else would. Arthur sipped his coffee and leaned back, his eyes scanning the rain-streaked window. He once told me, noise can buy you attention, but silence earns trust. I didn't get it at the time. Maybe I still don't, but he meant it. I sat up straighter. You said you worked for him. Doing what? Logistics. Some private investments, a little estate work here and there. Nothing glamorous. But he trusted me. His eyes narrowed slightly. Said I understood what it meant to be overlooked. That hit deeper than I expected. I looked down at my plate, the eggs now cold. Arthur reached into his coat and tapped the edge of my backpack. You still got that envelope he gave you? I hesitated, then unzipped the front pocket and pulled it out. It felt heavier now, like it had been waiting for this moment. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single slip of paper. My boy, truth needs silence before it speaks. Beneath it, written in faded ink, was an address, 821 Westmere Lane. I stared at it. What is this? Arthur took one look and his jaw tightened. Westmere. I haven't heard that name in 20 years. He didn't say more, just took out his old flip phone, tapped a few buttons, and showed me a web page. It was for the Hale Foundation Gala, an event hosted by my father every year. There it was, front and center, a glossy family photo. My dad in a tux, my sister Clara in her signature red lipstick, and Dean, her fiancé, I think. But not me. My name wasn't in the caption. Roderick Hale and his children, Clara and Dean, it read. My throat went dry. They really deleted me. Arthur nodded slowly. They want to make you invisible. That's not an accident. That's design. I felt heat rise in my chest. He told me to get lost, that I was useless. Then he flies home and puts on a tux like nothing happened. Arthur leaned in, voice low. Your father's building an image. That kind of image doesn't leave room for mistakes, or memories he can't control. I looked down at the paper again, that address, that line from Grandpa, the silence before truth. Arthur reached into his coat again, pulled out an old, worn key. The brass was scratched, the engraving almost gone, but I could still make it out. SH 1994. He slid it across the table. What is this? Your next step. That key opens a place your grandfather kept off the books. Westmere isn't just a house. It's a story your father never wanted told. I took the key, held it in my palm. It was heavier than it looked, like it carried weight beyond metal. I don't even know what I'm walking into. That's the point, Arthur said quietly. but it's yours to walk. Or not. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just sat there staring out the diner window as trucks rolled down the wet highway, their lights streaking across the glass. They can erase my name from their walls, I murmured, but not from the truth. And in that moment, I stopped feeling like the boy who got abandoned at the gate. I started feeling like someone with a key and something worth unlocking. The address led me to a house my family never mentioned, and a secret my father had buried there. The drive out to Waco took nearly 3 hours. The road narrowed after the last gas station, turning into a cracked 2-lane strip that cut through open fields and clusters of oak. The radio in Arthur's truck didn't work, so the only sounds were the hum of the tires and the occasional sigh he let out when checking the directions. The address from the envelope, 821 Westmere Lane, sat in my hand like something sacred and dangerous. By the time we reached the property, dusk had already settled. The place looked forgotten by everyone but the wind. Tall grass covered what used to be a gravel driveway. A rusted mailbox leaned sideways, the name Hale barely visible through the flaking paint. The gate was chained, padlocked, and overgrown with vines. Arthur killed the engine and got out first. "Well," he said, brushing his palms against his jeans, "looks like nobody's been here in years." I stepped out and held up the old key. The brass caught the last of the daylight. "Maybe it's been waiting." We climbed over the gate, crunching through dry weeds until we reached the porch. The boards creaked under our weight. The front door had one of those old-fashioned locks, and when I slid the key in, it turned smooth as butter. No resistance, like it had known I was coming. When the door opened, a smell of dust and cedar spilled out. Sunlight pushed through the cracks of boarded windows, catching floating dust in midair. Everything was still, like the world had stopped the day Silas Hale died. "He really meant for me to find this," I whispered. Inside, time had been preserved. Family photos lined the hallway, black and white frames of weddings, graduations, birthdays. On a small side table sat a cracked cigar box and an ashtray still holding a stub as if he'd left in the middle of a smoke. We found the study at the end of the hall. The air felt heavier there. The grand piano by the window was covered in dust, and sheet music lay yellowed on the bench. On the wall hung a portrait of my grandfather, stern but kind. Beside it, a smaller frame caught my eye. Me, at about 8 years old, standing next to him, holding that same pocket watch in my tiny hands. Arthur turned the frame over. On the back, written in faded ink, "The quiet one will remember." I didn't say anything for a while. The words hit too close. Arthur nodded toward the massive oak desk in the center of the room. "If Silas left anything behind, it's in there." The desk drawers were locked, but Arthur was a patient man. He found a screwdriver in a side cabinet and worked one open. Inside was a stack of ledgers, old fountain pens, and one sealed envelope marked in bold handwriting, "To be opened by Asa Hale only." My breath caught. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter, my hands trembling. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakably his. My son Roderick was my failure. "And my hope is you, Asa. If you read this, they've already taken what's yours. Don't fight them with anger. Fight them with truth. Your inheritance was never money. It's proof." I read it again, slower this time, each word sinking deeper. My throat burned. Arthur said nothing, just watched. Then he noticed something under the desk, a corner that didn't sit flush. He crouched, running his hand along the underside until he found a hidden latch. The panel gave way with a soft click. Behind it was a small, metal compartment. Inside lay a single USB drive labeled Hale Legacy Files. Arthur exhaled sharply. "This is it. Whatever he wanted you to see, it's on that drive." I held it up. "Then we'll open it." Arthur looked uneasy. "Not here. If these walls have eyes, your father already knows you're digging." But I wasn't leaving without answers. I found an old laptop on the bookshelf, miraculously still charged. The screen flickered to life after a few taps. The drive loaded instantly. Folders filled the screen, documents, scanned letters, recordings. Most were labeled with corporate jargon I didn't recognize. Asset reallocation, board memo, forged addendum. But one file stood out. A voice memo dated 3 days before Silas's death. I clicked play. My grandfather's voice came through, frail but steady. "If anything happens to me, Asa must know. I've secured his name where they can't reach. The truth is buried beneath the noise, but it breathes. I froze. For a second, I thought I heard my own heartbeat in the echo of his voice. Arthur leaned closer, his face pale. If this is real, your father's been rewriting history for years. He forged these documents, took control after Silas passed. I felt my stomach twist. He already took my place in the family. Guess he wanted everything else too. Arthur turned toward me, serious now. If these files ever see daylight, he'll come after you. Not just your name this time, your life. I looked back at the screen, at the file names that spelled out the theft of everything my grandfather built. He already tried once, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then out of nowhere, a faint rumble came from outside. Arthur went to the window, parted the dusty curtain. Headlights flickered through the trees, slow and deliberate, moving closer down the long dirt road. He turned off the desk lamp. We're not alone. My pulse raced. I yanked the USB from the laptop and stuffed it into my pocket. The hum of an engine grew louder. Arthur's voice dropped to a whisper. Whoever that is, they're not lost. I gripped the flash drive tight enough for the metal to bite into my palm. That night I realized the past wasn't buried. It was coming for me. I hadn't even had time to move from the desk when the engine went silent outside. The headlights cut through the curtain seams, still, motionless. My fingers curled tighter around the flash drive in my pocket. Beside me, Arthur didn't say a word. He just stood there, eyes narrowed toward the door like a man who's lived long enough to know when trouble walks in wearing a familiar face. A knock, not frantic, not uncertain, just steady, deliberate. Then his voice, low, calm, too familiar to mistake. Open the door, son. Let's talk like men. I didn't move at first. Neither did Arthur. Rain had started, tapping the tin roof above like fingers drumming on a casket. Another knock, then the rattle of the doorknob. Arthur leaned in close. He shouldn't have found us this fast. I nodded, jaw tight. Then slowly I moved to the door and unlatched it. The hinges creaked as it opened. There he was, my father. Roderick Hales stood tall beneath a wide black umbrella, dressed like he just left a board meeting, not a muddy back road in the middle of a Texas storm. His suit dry, his smile tight, and his eyes sharp as broken glass. He stepped inside, uninvited, closing the umbrella as if this were his own living room. Water dripped from his shoes onto the wooden floor. I always wondered when someone would come back here, he said, glancing around the room like he was inspecting damage. His gaze landed on the open drawer. So, this is where you've been hiding, digging through things that don't belong to you. I closed the door behind him. My hand trembled, but my voice didn't. They were never yours to begin with. That stopped him. Just a blink. But I saw it. Roderick chuckled and walked over to the fireplace, brushing dust from the mantel like it annoyed him. You've always had a flair for drama, Asa. Still chasing ghosts? He turned back toward me. Let me guess. You think Silas left you a secret fortune, don't you? I said nothing. He shook his head slowly. You were always his pet project, but he saw it too eventually. You're not cut out for this world. That's why he didn't leave you a thing. I stared at him, trying to read where the lie ended and the truth began. But then he slipped, like all liars do when they talk too long. That old fool wanted you to run the foundation, he muttered, almost to himself. I couldn't let him ruin it. There it was, a crack wide enough to see through. Arthur stepped forward. So you forged the transfer of ownership. You deleted Asa from the records. Roderick turned, the fake smile gone. You should have stayed retired, Briggs. You think anyone's going to believe a washed-up accountant over the CEO of the Hale Foundation? His tone turned sharp. You both have no idea what you're stepping into. This isn't about a will. It's about legacy, reputation, power. Right then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, thumb hovering over the screen. Clara. Arthur shook his head slightly, warning me, but I answered. Her voice came through in a whisper. Dad knows everything. He said you stole from Grandpa's office. Asa, just give it back before he ruins you. I almost laughed. You still believe him after everything? There was silence on her end. Heavy, telling. He said you forged your name on the letterhead, that you're trying to ruin what's left of the family. The family? I asked. You mean the one that erased me like I never existed? Another pause, then a click. She'd hung up. I slid the phone into my pocket and looked at my father. You got her too. He didn't deny it, didn't need to. That's when he moved. Fast. His hand reached for the flash drive I'd set momentarily on the table, but I was quicker. I snatched it and backed away. Arthur stepped between us. You lay a hand on him, Roderick, and I swear, Roderick raised both hands mockingly. Call the police then. Tell them you broke into my house, trespassed on my property. Let's see how well that plays. And it hit me like a punch. He wasn't wrong. Legally, the house, the company, everything bore his name now. Not mine, but the truth. That was still mine. We're leaving, Arthur said, his voice calm but final. We moved toward the back door. My father didn't follow. He stood there, arms crossed, fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. As I opened the door, he called out, "You'll never outrun what you are, a mistake I should have erased sooner." I stopped, heart pounding, then turned back just slightly. You already tried. The rain greeted us like a wall of needles. We ran toward Arthur's truck, the gravel slick beneath our feet. Behind me, a flash of lightning lit up the house one more time. And there he was, my father. Standing in the doorway, unmoving, a shadow among shadows, watching, waiting. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he didn't need to, because somehow I knew this wasn't over. Arthur drove the whole way back to Dallas without a word. Rain traced lines down the windshield, each drop carrying a piece of everything we weren't ready to say yet. I held the flash drive in my hand the entire ride, like it might vanish if I loosened my grip. My fingers were numb by the time we pulled up to Arthur's place in Oak Cliff, a modest two-story with mismatched siding and a porch light that flickered with every gust of wind. Inside, the apartment smelled like dust, old books, and burnt coffee grounds. I dropped onto the couch, soaked and shivering, my clothes heavy with water and something else I couldn't shake. Arthur came back from the kitchen with a towel and handed it to me. "You're thinking too loud," he said. I rubbed the back of my neck. "They've been winning since I was 16. He didn't argue, just sat across from me, his eyes on the drive like it might explode. We didn't sleep. The storm outside had quieted by dawn, but the one inside my chest only built louder. When morning finally rolled in, Arthur flicked on the TV out of habit. He was halfway through making coffee when the anchor's voice cut through the air. Breaking news this morning. A scandal shaking the Hale Foundation. CEO Roderick Hale has issued a public statement accusing his estranged son, Asa Hale, of breaking into a family-owned property, stealing private documents, and tampering with legacy accounts. My stomach dropped. On screen, security footage played. Grainy clips of me entering the ranch house, zoomed-in stills pulled from God knows where. Then came Roderick's voice, polished, calm, the voice of a man who knew exactly how to spin a storm. Asa has struggled with his mental health for many years. This isn't about money. It's about helping someone who refuses to accept help. I'm afraid for him. I'm afraid for our safety. Arthur turned off the TV. I sat there, fists clenched, jaw tight enough to ache. He's building the narrative before I can even breathe. That's what men like him do, Arthur said softly. You can't outshout them, but you can outlast them. You fight with proof, not panic. I nodded slowly, pulling the flash drive from my pocket. Let's see what Silas was trying to protect. Arthur grabbed his old laptop, one of those chunky models with tape on the corner and keys that stuck. He connected the drive and started digging. It asked for a password. He tried Silas's birthday, anniversary, business license numbers. Nothing worked. Then he paused. Wait, your grandfather had a pattern in all his financials. Every code ended in multiples of 7. He adjusted the numbers, paused, hit enter. The screen blinked once, then a folder popped open. One word, recordings. Arthur clicked. The first file loaded, and Silas's voice, soft and tired, filled the room. If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't stop him. My son was always hungry for power. But Asa, you were meant to hold truth, not control. A pause. Then another voice. You old fool, you think anyone will believe him? He's nothing. He's you, without the brains. A muffled thud. Furniture scraped. A sharp intake of breath. Then silence. Arthur froze, his hand trembling on the mouse. This could prove your father was there when he died. No, I said, voice cracking. It could prove he killed him. Before Arthur could reply, my phone rang. Clara. Again. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was raw, barely above a whisper. Asa, what are you doing? Dad's going to the police. He's saying you're unstable. He's saying you broke into the house. He says you stole from Grandpa's study. I didn't steal anything, I said quietly. I found what he didn't want me to find. She sniffled. Just give it back, please. He's scared, Asa. We're all scared. I bit back a laugh. He said the same thing when I was 16, that I was dangerous, that I needed help. You believed him then too. There was a pause. She didn't hang up, but she didn't defend him either. The call went silent. I set the phone down and just sat there, the weight of it all pressing into my chest. Then I slammed my fist into the table hard enough to make the coffee cups rattle. He gets to rewrite every memory. And people believe him, because he smiles while doing it. Arthur watched me, letting the silence stretch. Then he said, Good. Let it burn. Let it push you forward. But don't let it blind you. I looked at the screen again. The folder, the voice, the truth. He used the media to destroy me, I said, but I'll use the truth to destroy the mask he's hiding behind. I opened a small browser connected to a public archival site. Anonymous submissions allowed. I uploaded the audio. Just one clip. Just enough. Silas's voice, tired, trembling, but clear. If Asa ever finds these, he deserves the truth. I hit submit, and then we waited. Minutes passed. The clip began to spread, and first on niche forums, then small news blogs. No headlines yet, but the comment sections lit up. Who's the voice in the background? Sounds like Hale's CEO. Why isn't this bigger news? But it was coming. The storm hadn't ended. It had only just begun. By the time sunlight crept through the blinds of Arthur's cramped hotel room, the internet had already done what it does best: run wild. My name was trending, not because of anything I did, but because of what I represented. The first real crack in a legacy everyone thought was untouchable. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, back against the side of the bed, scrolling through an endless stream of headlines. Hale scandal erupts. Secret recording exposes billionaire patriarch. Is Asa Hale telling the truth? Audio sparks questions about death of Silas Hale. Each article carried a different shade of speculation. Some sided with me. Others already questioned my motives, my sanity, my emotional instability. One even dug up a photo from when I was 17, crying outside a courthouse. Arthur leaned over my shoulder and squinted. The truth's a wildfire, he muttered. You can strike the match, but you don't control where the flames go. I rubbed my eyes. Doesn't feel like truth. Feels like I just lit myself on fire. Around noon, Arthur was flipping channels when we landed on a national morning show. Glossy, scripted, polite. The screen flashed exclusive interview. Roderick Hale breaks silence. There he was, center frame, hair perfect, voice smooth. Even his tie looked sympathetic. I've always tried to protect my family, he said, blinking slow and steady like some TV pastor. But Asa has been unwell for years. He needs help, not attention. That recording, it's deepfake garbage. Anyone can manipulate audio these days. Arthur threw the remote. It bounced off the wall and clattered to the floor. He's flipping the script right in front of us, he snapped, and they're letting him. I didn't respond. I was too busy watching my father's eyes, calm, calculated. I'd seen that look before. Behind closed doors, it came with fists and silence. In public, it wore concern like a well-tailored coat. I pray for him, Roderick said, voice low and dripping with false mercy. I hope he finds peace. I turned off the TV. Let him talk. People who fake empathy always slip. But the backlash came fast. My inbox flooded with hate mail, some calling me an ungrateful son, others accusing me of exploiting a dead man's memory. There were death threats, requests for interviews, a car I didn't recognize parked across the street all afternoon. We're moving, Arthur said firmly. This isn't attention anymore. It's intimidation. We packed in silence, then checked into a new place near downtown, a cheap business hotel tucked between two towers. I stayed off social media. Every time I looked, I felt like I was unraveling in real time. That night, as I sat on the edge of the bed, a new email came through. The subject line read, I know the hail pattern. Meet me. Sender, mtorres@dfwpost.com. Arthur leaned over my shoulder. Could be bait. Maybe, I said, rereading the message. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't desperate. It was precise, clean, almost surgical. If I want truth to speak, I murmured, I can't hide forever. Arthur didn't argue. He just handed me the burner phone and said, give me 10 minutes, then I follow. The next morning, I met Maya Torres at a hole-in-the-wall coffee shop near Dealey Plaza. She looked early 40s, no nonsense, hair in a bun, eyes sharp like a prosecutor's. I've been watching the Hale family for years, she said, sipping her espresso. Too many things that look too clean. That's usually where the mess hides. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were copies of tax filings, wire transfers, and shell charity names I'd never heard of, all connected to the Hale Foundation. Your father, she said, used your grandfather's name to build a laundering machine. Philanthropy was just the packaging. I stared at the documents. My stomach flipped. She leaned in. If you want to win, don't prove he lied. Show who he really is. Arthur wasn't thrilled when I told him. Journalists don't chase justice, he warned. They chase fire, and they don't care who burns. I know, I said, so let's make this fire count. Maya arranged the rest. A small studio, a timed release, a controlled setting. She would air the raw audio, the financial proof, and give me a platform. Under one condition, no full face, no name, unless I allowed it. That's my only ask, I told her. This isn't about me. It's about what he buried, and what my grandfather tried to protect. The night before the interview, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of our dark hotel room, replaying my father's words from the airport. You're the shame of my life. That voice used to flatten me, used to keep me up for days. But tonight, it only pushed me forward. Arthur finally broke the silence. Tomorrow, he said softly, silence speaks for you. We both knew what that meant. Tomorrow I'd stop being a footnote in his story and start rewriting my own. At 6:42 the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Maya. Her voice shook. Asa, someone leaked the broadcast location. Your father knows everything. I looked at Arthur. He was already grabbing his coat. This wasn't just a war of truth anymore. It was about who got there first. We arrived at the Dallas Morning Network studio just before dawn. The city hadn't woken up yet, but the building already hummed with the tension of 100 unsaid things. The air felt heavy, like it knew a reckoning was coming. Arthur parked in the underground garage, eyes scanning every corner like a soldier walking into enemy territory. I stayed silent beside him, running over every second of the plan in my head, but nothing felt steady anymore. Maya met us in the lobby, holding a clipboard and a coffee she hadn't touched. Her eyes were sharper than usual, but her smile was tight. Forced. Everything's set, she said, voice low. We go live in 20. I followed her through the hallway of glass and concrete, passing the makeup room, the control booth, the main set. I knew I wouldn't be seen. My segment was pre-recorded, but I could still feel the pressure pressing down on my ribs. Then I saw him, not in person, but in presence. A security guard stood near the control room entrance wearing a dark blazer over a Hale Foundation pin. He didn't look at me, didn't move, just stood there with arms folded like a statue carved from old threats. Arthur leaned closer. He's already here. Maya glanced back, saw what we saw, and kept walking without a word. But her pace quickened. Inside the studio, the lights dimmed. Maya stood by the host's desk, adjusting her earpiece. The red light blinked on. Tonight, she began, we bring you the untold story behind one of Texas's most powerful families, and the truths long buried beneath its legacy. My voice, recorded hours earlier, played over the studio speakers. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. My name is Asa Hale, and today the truth finally speaks. The screen behind her lit up with documents, photos, and financial charts. She walked the viewers through each one: Silas's memo, the shell foundations, the audio file. Then, static. The screen flickered. Sound dropped. The feed cut. And suddenly there he was. Roderick Hale's face filled every screen, every live stream, every broadcast outlet connected to the studio. His expression was serene, hair flawless, tone measured. "It's tragic," he said. "What bitterness can create. Lies dressed as loyalty." He held up a folder. "These," he continued, "are the psychiatric evaluations of my son. He struggled for years. We tried to help, but he refused. And now, this." Gasps rippled across the crew. Behind the cameras, a producer froze mid-step. Maya's jaw clenched. Arthur's hand curled into a fist. I couldn't breathe. Roderick wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. His voice was low, fatherly, drenched in false compassion. That was always his weapon: calm cruelty. "I loved my son," he said. "Still do. But sometimes, love isn't enough." Then, like a bad dream warping into something worse, Clara stepped into the frame. She was supposed to be in San Antonio. She wasn't supposed to be here. Tears streaked her cheeks as she walked on stage, face pale, shoulders trembling. "Dad, stop," she said, voice cracking. Roderick turned toward her, arms wide like a martyr. "Even she can't bear to watch him destroy himself," he said, wrapping her into a perfect, photogenic embrace. The moment snapped something in me. I stood in the back hallway, mic still clipped to my collar, fingers twitching. The floor didn't feel real. The air thinned. I could hear my father's voice again, echoing from the past. "You're the shame of my life." Maya stepped off set and reached for my arm. "Don't. Not yet," she said. Arthur grabbed my other shoulder. "He wants you to explode. Don't give it to him." And then it happened. The screens blinked again, just once. Then a new voice filled the studio. Silas, clear, unequivocal, uncut. "If my son Roderick inherits what he stole, may the truth follow him until his last breath." Silence, then chaos. The broadcast system had auto-triggered Arthur's backup file, the one he uploaded behind everyone's backs. A final message, time-stamped and authenticated. No edits, no room for doubt. Gasps erupted. Producers shouted. The online chat feed blew up in real time. The camera caught Roderick's face, not composed, not controlled, but cracked. His lips parted, color draining. "That's fake," he stammered, eyes darting off screen. Maya stepped back into the frame, eyes like steel. "The recording's metadata places it 2 hours before Silas Hale died. It was verified by 2 forensic audio labs." I stood tall, my breath back, my voice steady. "You always said silence was weakness," I said. "Turns out it was my strength." Roderick yanked off his mic. The last thing we saw was him storming away, his perfect image finally broken. The feed cut. The room fell dark. For a moment, no one moved. Then Maya exhaled, loud and long, her shoulders sinking. Arthur looked at me, his hand gripping my shoulder like a father should. "You did it." But I didn't smile. My eyes were already on the doors. "No," I whispered. "He's not done yet." And outside, sirens grew louder. Police, media vans, and something else. The sound of a legacy shattering, piece by piece. But inside the quiet, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't running. I was already thinking of where this had to end. 2 days passed after the live broadcast. Enough time for headlines to multiply, for boardrooms to burn. Shareholders began distancing themselves from the Hale name. Emails leaked. Old allies vanished. The empire my father built wasn't crumbling. It was imploding from the inside out. Arthur kept his phone on airplane mode. Maya was fielding media like a pro. I stayed still, watched, waited. Then, just after noon, Maya walked in with her laptop open, face unreadable. "He sent this to the station's general inbox," she said, spinning the screen toward me. A plain message, no logo, no threats. "Final clarification," it read. "Hale Estate, 7 p.m., RH. Arthur's jaw clenched. "He's cornered. A cornered man bites." I looked at him. "Then let him bite." The sun was setting when we pulled into the circular drive of the old Hale estate in Highland Park. The mansion loomed like a memory I never asked to remember. Same iron gate, same stone lions. But something was off. No valet, no staff, no music in the garden like the parties from my childhood. Just silence. I stepped out first, pocketing the old watch that never left me now. Its tick was faint, steady. For years it had stayed silent. Now it pulsed like a second heartbeat. The front doors creaked open. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. Most of the rooms were dark, furniture draped in cloth. The house I'd grown up in had become a mausoleum. My footsteps echoed as I walked past the staircase, the same one where he'd once stood over me and said, "Get lost, useless boy." The grand piano sat in the hallway where the light pooled in soft gold. He was already there, back straight, fingers resting on the keys. Roderick Hale. His hair was grayer than I remembered, and the sharpness in his jaw had dulled. But his eyes, those never changed. Hard, controlled, proud to a fault. He played a single, dissonant note, then looked up. "You think the world loves you now?" he asked without standing. "You destroyed our name." I didn't flinch. "You destroyed it the day you erased mine." He paused, a twitch at the corner of his mouth, something like disdain. Maya entered next, followed by a legal clerk. She set a folder gently on the table beside the piano. "This is the original transfer agreement," she said. "Foundation ownership. Silas never signed this." Roderick didn't even glance at it. "You think a piece of paper matters?" "No," she said. "But this isn't just paper. It's the forged signature you used to steal it all. It was buried in the tax filings 20 years ago. We verified it against Silas's real documents." His face went pale, just slightly, but enough. Still, he leaned back, forcing a smile. "And who will punish me? I built this city. I paid for their campaigns, their kids' schools. You think some online circus and a forged accusation are enough?" I stepped closer, pulled the pocket watch from my coat. Tick, tick. "Grandpa always said the truth needs silence before it speaks," I said. "Now it's your turn to listen." He scoffed. "You want applause for this little performance?" I ignored him. "The moment you walked in this room," I continued, "this watch started recording, just like it did the night Silas died. We tested it last week. Works like a charm." He froze. Maya lifted her phone slowly and turned the screen toward him. The little red icon in the corner blinked. "We're live," she said quietly, "on 3 platforms." For the first time since I was 16, Roderick Hale didn't have a script. "You," he started, voice catching. I cut him off. "You said I was a disappointment, a stain, useless. Turns out I paid attention after all." He looked at the camera, then away. He tried to speak again, but the words didn't come. Sirens approached. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. When the officers walked in, he didn't resist. But as they cuffed him, he turned to me, face drained, voice hollow. "You're still my son." I looked him in the eye. For just a moment, something flickered. Not forgiveness, not rage, just finality. "That's your punishment." Clara stood behind me, tears spilling, hands covering her mouth. She stepped forward as they took him through the doorway, her voice barely a whisper. "It's over." I shook my head. "No, it's just quiet now." I reached for the watch again. This time it ticked normally. No hidden mic, no silence, just time, finally moving forward. Outside, the air had shifted. The storm clouds were gone. Dawn was trying to break. Maya walked beside me, hands in her coat. "What will you do now?" she asked. I didn't look back. "Build something that lasts," I said, "and doesn't need my name on it." And with that, I stepped off the Hale estate for the last time, letting the past echo behind me, until it faded into nothing. That night I didn't sleep, but I wasn't restless. For the first time in years, the silence didn't press in like a weight. It felt earned. 6 months later, I found myself on a park bench just outside downtown Dallas. The morning air held a quiet warmth, the kind that doesn't ask for attention, just exists. The trees swayed gently, and in the distance, the glass panels of the new Hale Foundation offices caught the rising sun. I looked down at my wrist. The old pocket watch was now a simple wristband, same ticking heart inside, but with a new face. It ticked perfectly, like it had never been broken. For years, I murmured, I thought silence meant weakness. The wind stirred the leaves near my feet. Now I know it means peace. Maya's article had gone live 3 months ago. Front page, The Legacy of Silence. Her words, not mine. She told the world what happened, the theft, the lies, the cost. But she also told them who Silas Hale truly was. Not a tycoon, not a martyr, just a man who knew truth didn't have to roar. Roderick was still awaiting trial. The charges stacked up like bricks around him. Financial crimes, foundation mismanagement, falsifying legal records. Some networks still tried to frame it as a family feud. Let them. Arthur retired shortly after. No ceremony, no speech, just a note taped to my door. You're ready. Don't call unless it's about coffee or baseball. I still saw him twice a week. We didn't talk much. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We just sat. And somehow, that silence said more than years of conversation ever could. It was a Thursday afternoon when Clara visited. I hadn't seen her in nearly a month. She looked lighter, less burdened by the weight of names and sides. She held a small wooden box. It's from Dad's house, she said, voice uncertain. Inside was a single photograph, me and Roderick sitting on a boat dock, rods in hand, grins wide. I couldn't have been older than 10. His arm around my shoulder looked genuine. He kept it, she whispered. I stared at it for a long time. Then maybe part of him wasn't all bad, I said quietly. Just lost. Clara sat beside me, and for a few minutes we watched the sky shift through shades of afternoon. No apologies, no forced forgiveness, just the kind of presence that says, we're still here. That night I pulled out the letter Silas had left me. The first one, creased, yellowed at the edges. His handwriting still firm despite the years. My boy, truth needs silence before it speaks. I ran my fingers across the page. He wasn't just talking about family or legacy. He was talking about voice, about choosing how and when we speak, and more importantly, why. He didn't want me to shout louder, I said to myself. He wanted me to speak clearer, and I finally understood. By summer, we'd repurposed part of the foundation. The lawsuits froze most operations, but the board allowed one thing to move forward, a scholarship fund. We named it The Quiet Legacy. It was for kids like me, those disowned, forgotten, told they were too much or not enough. And I made sure my name wasn't on any plaque, website, or announcement. One of the interns, maybe 19, asked me why. I smiled. You can build something strong, I told him, and never need your name carved on it. He nodded. He understood. On the last Friday of September, I left the office early. I walked down to the old riverbank where Silas's ashes had been scattered. The city was quieter there, the air heavy with the scent of oak and mud. I stood by the water, the sky fading orange behind the trees. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the watch. It ticked softly in my hand, the same rhythm that had guided me through storms, betrayal, and truth. I popped it open, held it over the water. A beat passed, then another. Time's yours now, Grandpa, I said, and I let it go. The watch dropped gently, the splash barely louder than a breath. The ticking faded into the current, swallowed whole but not forgotten. As the ripples smoothed out, I heard something. Not real, not in the air, but somewhere in me. A soft chuckle. The kind Silas used when he saw through a trick and let it go anyway. You made it, Asa. I smiled, eyes still fixed on the water. In the end, it wasn't revenge I wanted. Final narration. YouTube voiceover. When I was 16, I thought being forgotten was the worst fate. Now I know. Being at peace is better than being remembered for pain. My father taught me how to lose. My grandfather taught me how to win quietly. I turned from the river, the sky above finally clear. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end when you finally stop needing one,